Welcome back to the Scenery Farm. This video is all about the lids on the risers. These sheets of plywood that I'm using are not exactly 4x8, nor are they exactly square. The actual substrate of the plywood is great, and I can fix the problem of square and the correct dimensions rather readily by taking a domestic sheet of plywood, a good quality sheet of plywood, flattening or laying it on the bench, taking these oversized pieces, which often happens in cabinet wood. These are advertised at 4x8, so that they're over 4x8 is whatever, you get what you pay for. But the plywood substrate is worth it, and what I'm doing here is I'm just overhanging, and it's a 1/16 or a couple mil all the way around. I flush trim when they're clamped together, and then all the way around, and then I remove the clamps, move them to the corners where I can then get at the bits that I couldn't get at where the clamps were. I do that on both sides. Then I take ye old 1/8" router bit and I ease the corners with the 1/8" roundover bit all the way around. You can see the trim router there has a bigger base. I increased the size of it. I just cut a new piece of acrylic and chucked it on there. After I've done that to all the sheets, I mark out every 2 feet on center. Along the sides, that's 2, 4, and 6 feet, and on the ends, that's in the center. Obviously, if you're in a metric land and you're working in metric, you'll find I recommend you find the rostra or risers that you use. I just like saying rostra, even though it's rostra, which is the name for risers in different parts of the world. So find the metric locations of the Roto locks and their size of risers. What I'm doing is matching the standard 4x8 for North America, and the placement of the Coffin locks and the pattern of the Coffin locks. And once I've got all those 2 feet marked out, I take a square and I make a longer line, 4, 5, 6 inches at each one of those marks all the way around. These are the jigs you might have seen in the other video, and I'm just telling myself these 3 are female or male. And you can see on the bottom I have a picture of the underside of the riser, or the riser lid, because I want to put the actual bolt holes accurately on the underside of the riser, and if they go in on a degree angle or 2, it's not my goal, but if it does happen, the bolts can be mildly off place, the bolt heads can be mildly off place, but I want the holes on the bottom to locate the Coffin locks or Roto locks correctly. So I have a little Bessie clamp there, and I just squeeze it in place. I have 2 holes, and this is for the female Roto lock, and 17/64, I think, off the top of my head. I write it on the jig, like I literally, right where my left hand is right now, there's a little note telling me what bit to use, so I literally just pull the jig out and say, oh, it's this bit. And then the underside, oh, I don't have to worry about the location. I have a little drawing on both of those jigs, just to remind me. Well, there it is. I got it. Oh, lift it up, James. A little higher. Come on. You can do it. No, you can't do it. There it is. Yeah, there it is. 17/64. And this is me finishing off the third of the female ones. You can see I just have the 2 edges hanging off that have the corresponding type of Coffin lock. I check the male Coffin lock over there, the jig, and I'm working the 3 that are there. I have I think it's 3/8. I can't remember. For the male Coffin lock, you need a hole for the actual Allen, and it has to line up underneath the hole. I don't know why I just said that sentence. I'm going to ignore it. And this is me doing the 3/8 hole. There isn't a lot of blowout because the jig itself, I haven't beaten it up too terribly bad or badly. The piece of plywood on the bottom, I can flip it out when those holes get worked out. The actual important piece is the smaller piece of plywood that goes up directly against the steel and the piece of steel itself. As long as those two stay in the same relationship, and I just change out the bottom plate, when I start getting tear out on the underside, the bottom, it will remain aligned and true, and the bottom piece will keep tear out from the top. And I do I said do I do a bit of, oh, see, there was a bit of meanness on the underside of that jig. That piece does get a little bit of a beating. I don't know what I was saying. Look at those. Those are my corner jigs. Printed those off on a 3D printer, and they, I don't know, they're 3.5 inches long or so, and they have a little shoulder, and they're at 90 degrees. And there's a 3/4 inch. Don't glue the plastic. Don't glue the plastic. There's a 3/4 inch shoulder there, and I glue the block. I place the shoulder in the corner, and then I nail in 2 of the corners with an 18 gauge 1.25 inch pin, and I got to make sure that the depth on the piece on the nailer isn't set too aggressively, because it can kind of poke through. Oh, this is a really bad. There's the middle jig. I do a really bad job actually lining up that recording, but it's got 2 diamonds in it that line up, and they line up with the vertical line, and that way I can make sure it's centered on the line. That's right, glue the wood first, and once they're centered on the line, because they're centered in the jig, then I can put those 2 blocks in. I didn't want to just show me doing the other one because it was a great picture of my shoulder, which really, at any rate, I put the 2 nails in there. I keep the jig in place, and I guess the chevrons, because they're skewed at a 45-degree angle, the top and bottom of the chevron line up with the line. And this is me doing the last corner block. Yeah, sorry, I had a really crappy recording of that, but I think you get what I'm saying. It's just centering the jig on that line, doing the last corner. So these are my corner blocks. Once they're done and glued in place, I they do take a bit of abuse, so I do recommend gluing them. I then take a countersink, and I put a countersink in the opposite corners, the complementary corners, I guess, where the nails were, and there's pre-drill countersink number 8 dealio. And I have it set so the bit doesn't go through the face, obviously. I get all those pre-drilled, and then once they're pre-drilled, I do the 1.25 inch number 8 flathead screws. Just do it all the way around, 2 of those, and I love those little magnetic dishes. They do get filled with sawdust, but the cool thing is about that is if you have a blower, you can blow away the sawdust, and the metal stuff stays in place if you aren't too aggressive with the air. And this is me just doing the 1/8 inch rounder. I'm not fond of the 1/8 inch roundover for scenery on all the corner blocks. Yeah, oh, there's a nail sticking up there. I go back and I fix that later off camera. And that was me just playing with the depth and getting that right. Now I've marked the holes, and remember I drilled the holes, and this is me face up at this point on the handy dandy sawhorses that get the crap beaten out of them. And yeah, moving on, grab the coffin locks, put those in place. I actually think we get a pretty cool cameo here. And this is a countersink bit. I take the countersink bit and I touch the big hole, the 3/8, and then I go down so that I can countersink the stove bolts, the flathead 1/4 stove bolts that I'm putting in there so that the head is sunk beneath the surface. And I go around and I do all of that. And then cameo, there's Tommy. Hi Tommy, come here, Tommy. Oh, good boy. Yes, you're a good boy. Oh, and there's my bald spot. Yay, going bald. Not really. A little. Yeah. It's on the back, so I don't have to see it. It's wonderful. Now, get the coffin locks. I line them up. And it's important to line the coffin locks up so that from the top, it's a clockwise motion, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. I have put them in backwards. It's really not a big deal to flip them around. But you try not to. So I've gotten in the habit of just laying them all out. So it's they're sitting there waiting for me. I've got the 12 bolts and the 12 nylock or Teflon nuts that I need there. These ones drive with the number 3 Robbie. And what I do is I take the 5/16 Allen key and I put it through the hole that it's destined to use later. And then I put in the 1/4 bolts. It's, I think, a good thing to do that because, I mean, I've actually missed putting the Allen in there before I did this, and they still lined up. But if your jig is a little bit forgiving or the hole size on your bolts is a little bit forgiving, this step ensures that at least you'll be able to get it in there, and over time, if it is rubbing against wood, it won't for very long because the Allen key will take care of that for you. So I just nudge up the bolts or the nuts and the bolts, and I don't over tighten because if you over tighten the male side, it actually stops the cam lock action. It stops it from turning, and if you over tighten the female side, you can actually crush it, and then the cam lock won't fit in there. So you just tighten her up until it's snug, and then walk away. And this is a decent view of the last one. I left it in, even though I've done one of these before, so you can kind of see it a little more clearly in the orientation, and it isn't an awful picture of my back blocking everything. There's 1/4 the second 1/4, so much fun. And tighten that in, and Bob is your uncle. Yeah, pause, all done. And the cam lock's on the visually right hand side. I take the sheet, I flip her over, and then I unplug the grinder, because there you go. That disc is, even though it's still totally usable, it's a little small. The nut rubs up against the side of the coffin lock while I'm using it. So I just put on a fresh disc for the bolts. It gives an extra 1/2 inch or so, and so I don't hit the nut on the shoulder. I'll still use that other disc. And there we do go. I do the next obvious necessary step. I plug the silly bugger in, and then I literally just cut the top of the bolt off. Oh man, once I did this years and years ago in shorts, and I had one of those bolts drop into the top of my boot. Oh, they're hot. Oh, they're really hot. It was a 3/8 or a 1/2 inch, like it was a big chubby piece of steel I had to work at. And I remember I couldn't pop it out. I had to take the boot off. That was no fun. At any rate, don't do that. They're hot.